We have a couple of housekeeping things to do at the beginning, and then we'll have the presentation by Graham and John, and then you're most welcome to head off and have your supper, Graham, or you're most welcome to stay and sit in on the rest of our meeting. That's completely up to you. Do appreciate you taking your time tonight.
No, my pleasure, Jerry. Yeah, John unfortunately has just communicated with me that he's not able to join us because he's had something come up with his family. So I'll carry it without him.
Okay, thank you. So Holly, at 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Item 2 is confirmation of agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Carolyn and Joan, thank you. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. 3, declaration of pecuniary interest. If you have one, if you don't have one, you can say it now or bring it up anytime through the meeting. And if you do, make sure, I guess Holly gets it. She's nodding her head. And number 4, delegations and presentations. Can I have a mover and seconder, please, for 4.1, Flourish and Indwell Group Housing Delegation? I guess just you, John. Jerry?
Graham, it's Graham's visiting us with Martin. It's Graham, and I will move. So move.
Okay, seconder. Muriel, thank you. Graham, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thanks very much for the invitation. Yeah, I want to make sure that I offer something of value to you. So I hope that what I put together may be of some inspiration. It's not prescriptive. It's relaying some of our past experience. I know when Jerry tracked me down and said, you know, you need to help us because we need to make more progress. I said, listen, I can't guarantee anything, but I can share some of what we've done in other communities. So hopefully this is useful. I'm happy to take questions. However you'd like to structure it, either within the presentation or afterwards, but I just put together some slides. I'll make sure I can actually share here and then go from there. Just give me 1 second. There we go. And let's go to the screen. Okay, I trust that that's showing up. But if I hit share here. Okay. Okay. So I wear 2 hats, and the first hat that I wear for many years has been the Director of Projects and Development with Indwell. Some of you may have heard of Indwell. So much of this experience that I'll share with you is from our Indwell experience developing affordable housing and particularly supportive housing in municipalities across Ontario. We're now working with 8 municipalities. And then because of that experience, we've developed a lot of interest in the kinds of housing Indwell's been developing. And so we recently created a new nonprofit development company called Flourish, and I'm the president of Flourish. And our goal with Flourish is to be able to translate Indwell's experience outward beyond just working with Indwell to work with many others who want to develop affordable housing. So a lot of the conversations we're now having are with municipalities, nonprofits, other kinds of agencies, and community groups like yourself, trying to think, how do we do something to meet the needs in our specific community? So I will occasionally use the term we, and sometimes it means both. Usually I will probably default to it meaning Indwell, but bear with me as we sort of differentiate that. So Indwell is a charity. We're a registered charity. Our mission statement is to create affordable housing communities for people seeking health, wellness, and belonging. And that's really relating to both the affordability and the supports that we provide. So the vision of hope and homes for all is something that we believe in. Is, you know, we can talk about housing as a human right. We can talk about all kinds of things, but really we know that it's a core human need that we all have, is to have safe and affordable safe housing where we can live. Whether it's affordable is always an open question, but over the last number of years, my experience with Indwell, we've been able to build over 1,000 units of new housing in new communities. And so that's some of the experience I'll share with you tonight. Here's an example of one of the types of projects that we've done: adaptive reuse and conversion is one of our specialties. We've done 3 or 4 old bar, nightclub kind of complexes now. Seems every town has one of these. This was one in Hamilton, and you can see the before and after conditions. That's actually the same suite there. We created 57 studio apartments in this old nightclub conversion. So really transformative projects. Some of our experience has been new construction. This was our tallest building, I guess, a 6-story Main Street conversion project from an old car dealership, creating 47 apartments in our resource center. This was another project that we recently completed in Hamilton earlier, just at the beginning of the pandemic, actually in 2020, 51 bedroom apartments. It actually has a Hamilton Public Library branch as part of that project. And so it was one of our first times cooperating with the municipality to think what are other goals that we can achieve through an affordable housing project. And we built a library branch in the building there. The rest of the building is 50 one-bedroom apartments designed towards sort of long-term stable living for folks who've lived with or through mental health and addiction issues, but have found a kind of stability in their life. And the rents are relative to people's incomes who may have ODSP typically as their income. And then last year we opened this project in Hamilton. It's an adaptive reuse of an old industrial site, former dairy. Brownfield, it had everything going against it in terms of dereliction, heritage, servicing, brownfield contamination, etc. But we were able to create through three different buildings, one sort of overall project so far, 108 new apartments for tenants there. And actually there's a third phase to that project that we're just anticipating this fall, 23 family apartments in a sort of a stacked townhouse style design. This is the challenge that we see in many communities. There's different, priority areas. I stole this little graphic from Bruce County's housing plan. It seems that, right now in Canada, the market development sector really is sort of our go-to for finding new housing to get built. Right now, across most communities, it's not really building anything that's affordable to most people or many people. There's a big priority in some communities on if it's rental, it's usually like luxury rental, often for retirees. If it's new home construction, it's almost universally ownership housing rather than rental housing. That's shifting in a couple communities, but not widely across Ontario yet. And most of the time, it's at price points for folks who are selling some other property and moving to new housing rather than people entering the market or at most sort of income levels of people across Ontario. So that's part of the dilemma. And so, affordable additional rental units, townhouses, low-rise duplexes, the different options here are just not being built. And so that chart came from Bruce County. We also know that the homelessness crisis is now not just a big city problem in Ontario. We're seeing it across many, many communities. And so how to deal with actual street homelessness, how do we deal with the compounding issues of mental health and addiction? These are big factors that are reshaping how local decision makers are wrestling with the housing crisis. So we need new options to relieve this, because it's not the old ways of just build another subdivision and that's going to solve the housing crisis for us. This slide, as I've looked at it, I realized the numbers are not actually accurate to the final reality, and I couldn't find the source file to change it. But I wanted to use St. Thomas as an example of where a community decided, okay, we're going to try tackling homelessness and just developing new housing in a different way. We can't just, the police chief said, look, we can't enforce our way out of this homelessness crisis. We can't just arrest people who are sleeping rough. That doesn't solve it. So what are we going to do that's different? And, you know, council looked around and said, well, what's working in other communities? And, you know, invited Indwell into a conversation with other area partners, other agencies, with the municipal staff, et cetera. And we decided collectively that, you know, if there was 149 people on the waiting list, it's called the by name list for homeless. What if we built 150 apartments? Would that, it might not solve it exactly, but it sure as heck would turn the tide on it. And, you know, when we kind of looked at each other and said, is that possible? Rather than saying, no, we've never done anything like that, we thought, well, what would it take and how could we do that? And so we're 2/3 of the way through that strategy actually right now. And in that picture at the top, it's an example of the second project that we were working on. I have a final photo of it. It just started occupancy at the beginning of this month. It's 45 apartments, supportive housing, and actually with a municipal fire hall built right into the building. So an example where we're trying to achieve multiple ends by cooperative action, and really getting best value for public investments along the way. Incidentally, when we started down the strategy, we opened the first project, which was a municipally owned building, 15 apartments. We designed a very specialized support program for folks coming out of street encampments. The police reported about an 87% reduction in core policing after that program opened. And so some of the challenges that we're trying to solve through, in some communities, we're trying to solve homelessness through enforcement and other kinds of strategies that just are very expensive and very onerous on everybody involved. But sort of building supportive housing, building new housing options may actually be a much more cost-effective and actually effective way to get the results that we're looking for. This is a slide more for the visual rather than the specifics of what each of those pies represent. But right now, we kind of look for an all or nothing approach for government programs. CMHC, I'm going to say particularly, you know, the National Housing Strategy. Can we just get the funding from the feds? In reality, we see very few opportunities like that. It's much more like the bottom picture there, the bottom graph there on the left from St. Thomas, where we have to cobble together many different pieces, and there's a lot of work to that. You know, sometimes municipalities, the top left one was in Kitchener, Waterloo. Kitchener, a project there, St. Peter's, Waterloo region. You know, they put out an RFP, you respond to it. It's a competitive process. You hope for the best, you cross your fingers, you kind of make a bunch of pledges that you think you can honor. That works. But you see the large part of that, 50% or so, maybe comes from CMHC. A big chunk there, the green from the province. A different scenario, Chatham, Kent, where we're trying to cooperate with them in a different way. The municipality took a bigger risk because the project wasn't really eligible for some of the CMHC applications at the time, and so there was a different strategy. Now, unfortunately, that one didn't get awarded the funds recently, but we'll keep working on new applications for funding through CMHC and the province. But that one on the right, you know, if Rapid Housing Initiative does work, then a big chunk comes from the feds, and that's great. Except that project is that program was highly competitive, and the vast majority of projects don't get funded. So some version of the St. Thomas example down below there seems to be the one that we have to default to most often. And the problem is figuring out who goes first. In our experience, it's that the community actually takes the lead. Local people, service clubs, Rotary, churches, family foundations, somebody who says, I'm tired of the status quo and I want to make a difference, can often take the lead by putting up some money that then maybe gets the municipality's attention. The municipality contributes something, which then gets CMHC's attention because you can apply to the co-investment fund. And finally, usually the province is responsive to, like, well, if that's all happening, then we can come in with a certain amount of money. That's the scenario we've often found we have to default to, particularly for supportive housing. Now, it's different as we think about more broad broadly about affordable housing issues, but I think that the same kind of dynamic is likely at play for all the different solutions that we need that are outside of the typical market-driven ones. So I'm just going to use a few next slides here to kind of represent like how we've been working on building these new solutions, and really through strategic action, and it's usually in cooperation with the municipality. Whether it's an old school like the top left there, St. Agnes Catholic School was declared redundant in Chatham. We bought it from the school board through a competitive process, but they did pick Indwell's bid. I think it was the best price, but it was also the best value to deliver supportive housing. The example on the right there, that's the station in St. Thomas, where the municipality, said, well, this is part of a joint strategy. So what do we all have to give? They had some land. They needed a new fire hall. They wanted to redevelop this old brownfield. So, the cooperative action led to an amazing new project that tenants started moving into last week. Down the bottom left there, that's St. Mark's Lutheran Church in Kitchener, where the 3 congregations merged. They had this building. They could sell it to a condo developer. It's right on the LRT, but they wanted a sense of ministry to continue, and decided to sell it to Indwell for half the market price. That's an amazing gift, in a sense of not having to buy something at market price. Saved the project $1 million. So it's really a way to maximize the value of what we can all put on the table, whether it's public investment or in case of a church or a school board, investments that citizens have made over years towards the common good. Now, in recent times, there's been other things that have been changing. We are all familiar with the Planning Act changes, or we've heard of the Planning Act changes anyway, that the province has made. Secondary suites are now legal across Ontario. Municipalities need to create bylaws to allow them, whether it's in-home conversions or additional apartments that are allowed to be built, or whether it's examples like this one. Emma and I, my wife and I, actually built this apartment, or built this secondary suite. It was a coach house conversion in technical terms, but it replaced that old garage that was there in the backyard with a new garage and apartment. It's an 850 square foot 2-bedroom apartment that a family of 4 shares, 2 parents and 2 young children. And it's amazing. We were able to offer it at a rent that's probably $600 to $700 below current market costs for a 2-bedroom apartment, but we're still able to to more than break even on that because we didn't have a land cost. And it was an example of, we kind of did it as a demonstration project, but as an example of like how we can create new housing within the urban structure on an existing lot, often replacing something that had barely any useful value at all. That old garage literally was falling down. And so we were able to create that new space. But this opportunity is widely available across communities, and so far has not been picked up on dramatically, but I think is a tremendous holds tremendous potential, especially outside of urban areas. And then these are photos just from places I've been and we've seen around this region. Whether it's down on the bottom left there in Teeswater, the old hotel, big sign for sale, just sits there half renovated. I think the top left there, maybe the top 2 photos are in Stratford. The old hospital sits there vacant. In New Hamburg and Wilmot Township, the old feed mill closed, and it's been recently purchased by a community group that started a nonprofit, and they're going to be converting that into affordable and attainable apartments. None of these are easy, of course. I mean, why is the Teeswater one sit there half renovated? Because it's complicated. You got to know a few things to go through the process. But there's many opportunities that are out there in our communities. Buildings that are already standing there they're tremendously feasible. They're just not necessarily simple. But what can we do with some of this existing infrastructure that we have standing vacant around us? There's so many churches, many of us are part of faith communities. We know that it's difficult, especially with the pandemic, to keep the doors open and keep these these old buildings particularly, vital and maintained. The one on the top right there is the Presbyterian Church in Hagersville that I was at recently. They've closed. They've formally ceased to exist as a congregation, but they'd like to do something with their building. And the presbytery has said, well, if you can find a good use, we'll look at that. It's not an ideal project for Indwell. They wanted Indwell to come, but it might be ideal for another community group to create 12 or 15 apartments there, and keep that landmark building right on the main street, perfectly walkable to everything. In a great location. So what might that look like? Or the top left, there is a church that one's actually in Hamilton, but it's a small heritage church. It's got a plan together for 18 apartments. So what could be possible for many of the churches that are around the country and around the communities that we're part of. Or that bottom example, that was as recently in Brockville, and the semi-derelict rooming house kind of building next to the train station. These buildings go way back. They're some of the first buildings that were often built in our communities, and have stood sort of stood the test of time, but have often been neglected and are quite forlorn. But they actually hold tremendous potential for adaptive reuse and new ways of using them. So I think that there's these kinds of examples that are possible. Is sometimes thinking through how to make them possible, and then also the issue of ownership. Who is actually the current owner, and do they want to sell? That's a whole nother issue. But and then a couple of examples from locally. I know Huron County, I was doing some research and looking at different examples there. They built some triplexes recently, 2 new triplexes that kind of look like heritage homes, but are designed to have multiple apartments. There's some larger scale projects there, or again, one of these backyard conversions I saw. I don't know anything about that one with the Tyvek on it, except I could see it over the fence. So I took a picture of it. But it looks like it's the kind of infill opportunity that many sites would have. And then down in the bottom there, bottom left, that's a small infill project. It was a single family residential lot, or what used to have a single home on it in Paisley, now has this infill development of 6 what looked to be sort of 1-bedroom seniors. I think it was geared towards seniors townhouses. So 6 of those fit onto one property that used to have like a big old house on there. So and then this is another example from Paisley. Emma said I could use this because she's the architect for it, but the old Paisley Inn is being rebuilt. The building has fallen into extreme disrepair, quite literally fallen into disrepair, and is being rebuilt, but as 32, I think it is, new apartments. And so probably one of the largest rental projects built in Paisley ever, and new variety of housing options that are being built locally. So I think that there's these kinds of examples that are possible. They're not straightforward. They do often have complexities around servicing, or all the standard stuff about parking. Parking seems to come up no matter where it is, no matter who it's for, no matter anything. And then, but also how do we take each of these opportunities to achieve maybe more than one thing? In this case, it's building a variety of apartments that are also accessible, but also rebuilding the heritage icon. The Paisley Inn stood there for many, many years as kind of a landmark building, and so it's being rebuilt to look the same as it had always. So yeah, so those are some of the projects and the inspiration. But I think that one of the key things, I kind of use this photo because I thought it was funny as I was going through photos. We're nonpartisan. We'll work with whomever we can, and at any time we can. Whether it's the Prime Minister who visited one of our sites there a couple of years ago, or whether it's City Council. We have a whole new City Council that got elected in Hamilton. Whether it's the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing there, Minister Clark was at one of our sites a few months ago. Minister Lumsden with him. We know that housing is a nonpartisan issue in the sense of everyone agrees that we have a housing crisis and that we need to build more. So how do we find allies across the spectrum? How do we find the resources from all levels of government, and sometimes lead them to the solutions we need? Sometimes we said governments, and particularly as we go further up the chain, they don't know how to lead, they just know how to follow. But usually there's more funds available the farther you go up. So I think at a local level, if we can lead towards solutions, our civic leaders beyond the local level are often, they also listen to constituents, and they need to hear from us about what we actually need in doable, practical ways. We have to be pragmatic, we have to be practical, and if we can create something that works, that actually also builds a kind of momentum towards solutions. And I think that from Indwell's experience, we've taken certain kinds of risks, we've tried different things, we've done our own sort of research and development along the way. And when those projects work well, or when they, even if they don't work perfectly, what can we learn from each one to continuously improve? That itself builds a kind of positive momentum that then feeds on new success, that then builds new abilities to cooperate, which then inspires new ventures. So we're happy to have been and continue to be contributing to solutions across the province. We continue to hope that others will take something from what we've learned and be able to apply it to their community. So we're happy that you continue to seek out these kinds of solutions for your community. There are models that are working. There are projects that have been successful, and so seek those out. See what you can learn from other places, and keep learning. And then in reality, I'm a pretty firm believer that we're not going to see all the solutions we need simply by waiting for the housing market to build them for us. So what does it mean, especially when we deploy public funds? How do we do that in new ways that are creative and lead to long-term public benefit? I have lots of ideas. We collectively have a number of ideas that we're not sure how they might come to fruition yet. But when I talk to employers who say, I talked to an auto parts maker, they said I have 450 employees. I had 120 of them turn over last year, in large part because my employees can't find housing locally, and they don't want to drive through the snow belt to get to work because it's just too much. And I pay $22.50 to start with benefits beginning on day one, but I just can't find people to work here. And these are the kind of stories that we hear time and again from people saying, the jobs are here, they're decently paid, but we just can't find places for people to live. And this is a kind of collective responsibility that we all, in a sense, share, or at least those of us who know something about housing or know something about making decisions for our community. How do we carry that responsibility forward to actually do something that's going to work for our communities? So I share in the goal setting, I guess, with you, and the frustration of not seeing solutions as quickly as we need them. But hopefully, something that I've talked about tonight will be useful for you. And I'm happy, of course, to keep talking about this and maybe share, further ideas or if you have questions or comments. So that's the end of my presentation. I can stop sharing that and then just focus on thoughts or anything that you have, of course.
Well, thank you, Graham. I'm going to leave it open for questions from the committee, but I just want to say thank you for a couple of the slides, especially the one where you have the 50 apartments, and you didn't call them apartments. You didn't call them anything but homes. And I think for me personally, with the Building the Better Homes Act, they're forgetting the fact that a home can be anything. And they're really just sitting very heavily on the status quo of the exclusive, antiquated zoning for single detached homes. So that was a plus. That I was really impressed by that. And I'm glad you mentioned in that slide with all the three different bubbles interacting with each other, the one in the middle was, and you mentioned it in another previous, the missing middle. And I think Trudeau actually said that. Maybe that's why he was there at your building site, because he said that, it can't be just exclusive detached homes. You have to have the multiplex somewhere in there. You have to have the apartment building. And if we don't do that, we'll never solve the housing crisis. So I was very glad to see that. I really appreciated the presentation. So we'll leave it up to Carolyn's got a question, I would imagine.
Mhm. I know this wouldn't have a set answer, but just as a ballpark, I noticed that a lot of your capital funds were donated monies or grants, that type of thing. So is there a ratio, like, if you're taking in affordable rent income, does that really just cover the cost of renting the building? Or is there a debt load? Like what we've come to realize is that you can't actually build an affordable house or apartment or whatever and get your money back. It just, the ratio is not there right now. So do you know in a percent wise how much capital cost needs to be through raised money in order to make it a viable project?
I can't give a definitive percentage on that because it really does depend on what it is you're building and what you're going to charge in rent. I can use Indwell's example, where most of our tenants have ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program, as their primary income. So that allows that, that provides people with around 500, 5.25 for rent. Beyond that, now they're starting to dip into like what they use for groceries and other things. So we try to stay close to that number. In our past recent experience, and so the last number of 100 apartments that we've built, we've found that we need to contribute around 10 to 15% of the project through donations or community community contributions. It's been somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% from municipalities. This was before sort of the Bill 23, the changes to DCs, all of that. Although a lot of communities, actually smaller communities, haven't even had development charges, so that wasn't even a cost to the system. And then around 60% of the project would be funded through CMHC, and then the remainder would be from the province, so maybe around 20-25%. Obviously, if you add up all those numbers, it gets to maybe slightly higher than 100%, but that's where it's like ranges within there. But it's generally 50% feds, 25% province, and then the last 25% or so split between the community and the municipality. The dilemma, and this is what's happening across Ontario, is that the cost of construction is going up everywhere, materials, labor, etc. And so it's really not possible to build housing for $200,000 a unit anymore. It's not possible. It's always high risk, and I feel the sort of the glares of judgment from builders usually. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're wasting so much money. I had somebody tell me the other day. I was saying it might be around $400 a square foot if you're just sort of ballpark budgeting something now, not knowing anything about the cost, what it is you're trying to build. And somebody said to me, "Oh, that's ridiculous. I can build for $130 a foot." I said, "Done. I'll sign you today." He's, "Oh, well, I can't barely get trades to do my own projects." It's like, well, you're just making up numbers. And there's like a sense of judgment that's very easy to, this industry is highly competitive. And so we're always sort of judging each other and trying to like find the margin. And I think that when we're talking about things outside of like market driven forces, we simply have to share information. I talked to a counselor in KW. There's like three of them on this call, and they were like, honestly, it's impossible to get numbers of what stuff actually costs to build. So if we can start with like honest sharing of like real costs, and then figure out like how to cover those, the goal would be to like at minimum cover the costs for the project, and then work down how do we sort of improve the affordability of that to the tenant by some means. Is it by free capital? Is it by deferred capital? Is it by municipal land? There's like different ways to try to reduce the cost. That's kind of a very long way of saying there's not an exact percentage, but I think that if you were just to go out and build a project today and have the rents cover the costs of the project without kind of any outside investments from government, I think you'd probably need to charge about $2,000 a month. And then that's not affordable to most people. And so that's the crux of our dilemma.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll offer one more. This is like more of a personal metric that we used to sort of like, you sit there and read the newspaper and look at all the real estate ads. And it used to be with like 10 years ago, 100 times the monthly rent was a good investment as if you're trying to buy like a triplex. And you add up like the cumulative rent, say you could get like, $3,000. Well, 100 times that, so 300,000. Then with the low interest rates, it was maybe 200 times the monthly rent. You could buy a property and that would still be reasonable. But you realize, like, if you buy the average house now, it's what, 600,000 something I read in Canada. If you just rented that out to a single family, that'd be like 3,000, 4,000 bucks a month is what you'd need to charge. Well, we know that that's good for the landlord, but it's not so good for the tenant. And there's many families that can't afford that kind of rent. So the market economics of rental properties are pretty tough for the landlord to make money while offering an affordable rent for tenants.
I had one more question I thought of.
Yep. Go ahead, Carol.
Who runs your buildings, for lack of a better word? Like, so if the county is doing subsidized housing or that type of thing, and they're managing the list and running them that way, I'm thinking of a situation where you might have someone being willing to, they just don't want to get into the landlord piece, but they might have some land. So in your buildings, are they run or managed through your charity, or is there such a thing as a nonprofit rental management company? I'm just not sure really what I'm
That's a
looking
great
for.
question. I mean, in Indwell's case, yes, Indwell is the property manager for the properties that it owns, and actually has recently, in the last couple of years, taken on property management and operations, not just sort of like not just the property management, but actually running the whole support program for a couple of Region of Waterloo buildings, apartment buildings, for a project in Hamilton that's owned by a church. We're going to do another one like that in Kitchener. And then with St. Thomas, there's one of the buildings St. Thomas owns as the city. On the ground floor is actually their bus depot. They're like their bus transit authority. And then the second floor is housing, and we lease the whole building and then operate the whole building, or the whole apartment complex. So there is a reality. I've talked to a number of folks in smaller communities that say, honestly, there's no property management services available, and so I don't really want to get into being a landlord. But I wouldn't be opposed to like trying to create some housing. I think this is actually a gap that's missing in our region. Yep, for sure.
Okay.
I don't know what the right answer is to that. A nonprofit property management company might be a great idea, actually, or a property management company that actually treated tenants fairly, because there's lots that just take the rent eviction approach and say, oh, yeah, we know how to work, sort of on the edge of the market. Or maybe there's ways that the municipal housing corporation could expand its role to become a property manager for others. Some communities have done that. Most municipal housing corporations are pretty sort of tied to their model.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, Graham, thanks very much for your thoughts and your presentation. You and I had talked about some of the services that Flourish offers. I wonder if you could just briefly tell us, maybe in light of you were working on a project in Wingham, sort of what the numbers would be like if we were actually at a point where we could talk about something that you have a service that you might be able to provide.
Sure. Thanks, Jerry. I mean, I didn't want to try to make this a sales pitch per se, but this is the reality that Indwell's experience is. Indwell doesn't want to and can't be all things to all communities. And so how do we take that experience and translate it for others? You mentioned in Wingham, there's a group there similar to lots of communities, kind of struck a little committee, said, what can we do? They have there's a model called Abbey Field, which is around sort of seniors living, co-housing kind of model that they're interested in, but then they realized that their property actually, well, I said to them, I think your property is much larger than you need just for an Abbey Field. What if you built some more apartments on that? And so we've been talking with them about the idea of maybe 40 or 50 homes there, and that's something that we've then worked through, sort of some sketches, some concepts, what would this take, sort of general budgets, and then thinking through, okay, what would the group need to do if they were to lean into sort of opportunity of this magnitude? Would they need to strike a new nonprofit? Would they need to partner with somebody? Those questions about property management, all those kinds of similar things. And so Flourish is working with them as sort of a development consultant, helping them imagine what's possible and then figure out all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also working, had a call today with a municipality really around, this is actually a county, to say, we have these lists, we know we need 600 and something units for this, and we've got those for such and such, and we've got this homelessness problem. Like, we're not really sure what we can do to move the needle. And so Flourish is working with them to put together kind of an overarching plan, overlay the supportive housing experience that Indwell has onto it, because it's not just about building affordable units. Rental, a cheaper apartment without any supports may be disastrous for somebody who's living through mental health or addiction issues and actually needs the support. So what's the relationship between supportive housing, affordable housing, sort of near market or non-market housing? There's a real spectrum there, and I think that's another area where we're helping a municipality figure out what to do, on more of a county level. I'm not sure if that answers the question, Jerry.
Yeah, yes, it's that you have expertise. When the time comes that we need expertise, well, we'll probably be asking you questions before that time comes, but it's good to know that there are people that are willing to share their ideas and their thoughts and their successes and the things that haven't worked. And I will clearly state on behalf of the committee that we are not above begging, borrowing, or stealing any ideas that are out there. So
my pockets have been picked numerous times, so I know how that goes.
And again, I want to thank you, Graham, for being so generous with your time tonight, and I'm sure we'll have more questions, I'm sure, in the future. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. Well, thanks for the invitation, and I do wish you all the best in trying to figure out what to do locally to tackle this very complex but absolutely core to our existence problem. So yeah, thanks for the conversation tonight.
Yeah. Everyone, I lost my connection there. You probably noticed you didn't see me. I don't know why. It cut out. I had to re-go in. So I missed some of that, Graham, but I do have one question to end it.
Sure.
A lot of the places you've been in, I realized it was Wingham you're in now, that you're doing something.
We're working with a group in Wingham that's
Okay.
looking how to deal with seniors housing particularly. Yes.
Okay. So when we look at the information, like, I think what you're doing is great, but Hamilton, you're getting a big budget from Hamilton, getting a big budget from St. Thomas, Chatham. Their budgets are probably for the year 75 million, what have you. They have money to throw around. We want to get stuff done in township, but our budget every year is only 6 million. Like, we're going to have to do that one pie that you mentioned where we're going to need 13, 14 different partners. So the best one would be donations. So I think we all have to realize that.
I can appreciate that. I think most of my direct experience has been related to supportive housing. And so most of that has been through what's called the service manager or the county level, right? And so that's where the allocation of funds from the federal or provincial level usually goes. It goes to the county, then they usually distribute it right to the larger center. So you're in Grey County, where would it go? Owen Sound, right? And so they've got the hospital, they've got social services, they've got everything else. And so that's where probably most of the funds go. And then you've got the double problem of it's Grey Bruce. And so they probably split it up across both of those and then try to do a bit of sharing. I know I talked to the mayor, Chris Peabody in Walkerton or Brockton. He's frustrated because he's like, well, they did this regional sharing thing and we've all, we take our turn every 5 years, we get a nominal amount of like 2 or 3 million. He's like, I've got 300 folks just in Walkerton that need, affordable housing. So how am I supposed to wait 5-year cycles? This is ridiculous. It's the same kind of problem. Then I'm talking to our friend she's the deputy mayor in Aaron Aldersley, so Jen Christie. So she's like, what do we do here? We're a municipality of I think it's 6,500. Well, same problem. But then you look at this is riffing off into sort of somewhat unknown territory, and I don't have an answer, but I've talked to enough people to sort of wonder about this idea. I don't know what your roads budget is locally as a municipality. But if it's $6 million is your total budget, is it half of that's roads? Maybe half of it might be policing. But we have decided that things like roads are a core civic infrastructure. We don't ask questions about who uses them. We don't ask questions about what it's used for. We just make the decision to build them. Then we discuss whether or not we should repair the bridge or replace it or not. And sometimes we don't replace the bridge because, it's like it doesn't go anywhere and it's just a combine. Okay, so then people get upset, but you walk around, you go around. I'm almost starting to think that, we start thinking of housing as a similar kind of like core civic infrastructure. If we don't have places to live, we don't have jobs. If we don't have places to live, we don't have community. We don't have family being able to stay together. We have displacement. We've got all kinds of problems. We got, people driving miles and miles and miles because there's nowhere to live. And yet if we started thinking about housing as like a core infrastructure that we invest in, it doesn't really depreciate. It doesn't really go away, kind of like roads, although roads need constant maintenance too. Would that be a way to reframe why we invest in it? I don't know the answer to this, and I haven't found a sort of municipal, finance expert who can tell me some of the rules around this. But I think that something along those lines might be the route we need to go. I was talking to the mayor in Tilsonburg about this. This was before the pandemic, so it's a little bit outdated. But he's like, we've invested so much money in industrial parks. We have so many jobs that we've attracted here. We put in the infrastructure, we put in the roads, we put in the hydro, we put in the sewers, and we bring the jobs here. But now we can't fill these jobs because we don't, like, all of our housing is getting bought up by seniors. And so it's like, well, what if you started building housing in the same way you built all those other infrastructure for the, for industry? I don't think I haven't met any large employers or any employers actually who are that keen to be somebody's landlord. It creates lots of dynamics that are problematic around whether you fire people or you're their landlord, the old company town problem. But maybe there's a way that we can create new structures that allow people to live and to be and to work and to, have family in our community because they have housing there that's outside of the speculator market. And right now, housing speculation is
Rampant.
It's rampant.
Yep.
So I don't
Okay.
know. That was maybe riffing off into a little bit of unknown territory, but I think something along those lines may start to emerge as what's needed, so that when we think, I'm a taxpayer, I want solutions and I want good investment from my council. I would really love it if they actually said we're gonna put a levy that's going to put money into building housing, but we're going to have permanent public infrastructure from it. I'd be a heck of a lot better with that than new sidewalks every 3 years, because that seems to be what they do in my neighborhood. Yeah.
Well spoke. Last one, Joan, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, before you go, Graham, I just want to thank you for that presentation. It was really great. And it's good to see how you're using different concepts, different houses, from theater to whole building, nightclubs. And that's a great idea, because there are so many nightclubs that are closed down now. And these nightclubs are huge. And that's just a lot of space that is just there doing absolutely nothing in a lot of communities. So that's a great idea. And I also think that having that robust housing investment strategy, it's really good. And that's something that would cost the economy much less, and also help people that can't afford what is going on now. So that is really great. Thank you very much. It's really an eye opener for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that there's something here. I was saying to Jerry, I was driving through Markdale there the other day, and I know your big employer, right? Chapman's has got signs all over town, hiring all positions. It'd be interesting to talk to them, but like, what what is the actual pain point of their lack of ability to hire workers, and what's it meaning for them, and is housing part of the driver of that? I don't know, but I assume based on other conversations I've had that it is, and I don't know what, maybe they want to contribute to a solution. Who knows? Just ideas. I don't have any specific insight into their situation, but
Okay. Well, I won't echo what Joan said, Graham. Thank you very much. Now, you said John Sherman can't be here. He's with the Indwell, but you basically said Indwell is more of the project, looking after things.
Indwell is specifically, Indwell is a registered charity that exists to deliver supportive and affordable housing. So, Indwell was getting asked to do so many different things that it was like, we have to focus on our core mission. And so that's where we started Flourish out of the Indwell experience, in order to be able to sort of work with and speak with and imagine solutions beyond Indwell. I'll say that, Indwell is constantly getting invited by, municipalities, service managers, Bruce County, Grey County.
Yep.
Can you come here and do supportive housing? So that might be a possibility, but that really is related to specifically the supportive housing strategies.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Well, again, Graham, we appreciate it. You gave us a lot of food for thought. And yeah, I'd like to have a sit down because we need to think out the box with this. So thank you very much.
Well,
Okay.
I'm sure Jerry will be back in touch with me. Yeah.
I'm sure he will.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thumbs up.
talk soon. Take
Thank
care.
you
everybody.
again.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye.
Okay. Well, that was worth hearing. So be it resolved that the committee received the Flourish and Indwell Group Housing presentation for information. Mover and seconder? I don't need a mover and seconder.
Yeah, we have them already. So just if there's any opposition.
Yeah. Opposition. You're not opposed, Jerry. You can't be.
No opposition, just a thought. I read recently that there is planned to be a new administrative building for Southgate by 2026. I think based on this presentation, if there's not housing associated with that building, we've missed, we weren't listening.
That's something to put forward, because it has been on the books for probably 10 years. Things going on, I would imagine, to make it better, but that is one thing to bring up for sure. So with that being said, though, no one opposed? That will be carried. Okay, back to something a little bit more mundane. 5, the adoption of minutes. May I have a mover and a seconder? Joan and Muriel, you second it. Be it resolved that the committee, any discussion? Seeing none. Be it resolved that the committee approve the minutes from the July 18th, 2023 Affordable Attaining Housing Committee meeting as presented. Any opposition? Seeing none, that is carried. And 6, staff update. 6.1, communication strategy approval, verbal update. Now, this was passed. Holly, you reached out to Jordan about timing. Was that all sorted out between Jordan and yourself?
No, sorry, that's on me. Sorry, Holly, I can just take this one. I was away on vacation when I got that email, forgot to respond, but I would think those can be put out anytime if they can get them out this week. That'd be great, either Wednesday or Thursday. And then I was just thinking 1 per week for 3 consecutive weeks. Starting with the overview would make the most sense to me. So yeah, if there's anything else that needs communicated, that's all right. But I just thought I'd step in there.
Yeah, and in that order that was presented, right? Yeah, okay. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah.
Any discussion on that, guys? Anyone? Holly?
I was just going to say that's perfect, and I can make sure that gets done. So it will go on our social media and on our website as well.
Okay, great. Muriel, go ahead. Unmute, love.
Sorry.
worries.
We'd also talked about putting it in the paper, and that there would be a charge probably with that, but I think you were going to look into that possibility, Holly.
Yes, I was, and I just am waiting to hear back from the finance department, just on the budget to make sure that we have the space for it. If that is something, it can definitely come forward to the council, or sorry, to the committee.
Great. Okay. Seeing nothing else, we'll move to 6.2, potentially municipally owned affordable housing site update. Well, this was passed. Oh, sorry, Holly.
Thank you. So yeah, I was just going to provide an update to the committee that Clinton did bring a report forward on the properties that were discussed, and that council did agree to basically earmark them for potential development. And we just wanted to provide an update. Now Clinton is on vacation, so if you did have specific questions or next steps, I would encourage members to reach out to the Clinton directly by email, and he'll be able to give you an update.
Yeah. And really, now that it's passed before council, that they will be kind of put aside, it has to be another council decision to take that away. So the committee's done something good in that they're in perpetuation no matter what, unless another council says, well, we're not going to do that. There is something I came across when I was out and about on my little scooter. I saw on a development, a zone D. So I'd like to put a recommendation. We talked about this, Holly, for Clinton. Because the land is going to probably be used for affordable housing, that's the only land we have for that. If we could make a recommendation that those two properties, whatever they're zoned at now, have a zoning density D on it, because that provides for a certain, well, Clinton will know this, but it says here, it provides for a certain change in the density to allow multiplexes and stuff like that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I certainly can note in the minutes that that was a discussion. I would encourage you to reach out directly to Clinton. I can't speak to the zoning specifications, and I don't think we need a formal resolution for it, but I will put it in the minutes.
Put a recommendation, and I'll get hold of Clinton and chat him about that, because when I looked at it and when I actually Googled it and ended up getting those 35 pages, I found it in number 4. So it was good to read, and it is specific for what we want. We want multiplex on that property, some kind of 6 apartment building or something. So that would be great. Anything else about that? Jerry, go ahead.
I would like to put forward the idea of the same protection or reservation for 2 other additional properties, and that would be the Drumore property, municipally owned Drumore property, and also the Proton Station Park property. I will ask Holly for procedural advice. Does it have to go to Clint for a report and then back to the committee?
Yeah, I would suggest reaching out to Clinton. Just if we make a resolution about it, Clinton will have to bring a report back regardless, to note if they are developable properties for what it is that the township is looking for. So I would suggest that perhaps you reach out to Clinton directly and discuss the potential of those properties, and he can bring a report back before we make a formal resolution to council.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, okay, great. All righty. Seeing no hands up, seeing nothing else, we'll move to item 7, new business, which is 7.1, community bond programs, Vice Chair Jerry McNulty. Jerry, I did look at the link. You obviously think there's some potential here. That'll be your bailiwick, if you could speak on it.
Sure. So I have asked NOLA to co-present with me. NOLA's done a fair bit of research into the Institute of South Georgian Bay. I'll report on a webinar that was held recently by the group called Places for People. And this information would be available on that link. And so at this point, really just wanting to introduce the idea of community bonds, that it's a way to raise money. And as our presenter shared with us, raising money is pretty important for these community based projects. And so the idea would be with their bond program in Halliburton, they offer 3 levels. There's a Series A 3-year bond that returns 3%. And the minimum amount invested needs to be $1,000. They have a second investment option, a minimum of $5,000 for a minimum of 5 years, and there's 4% interest return. And they have a third option, and it's a minimum of 7 years commitment, a minimum of $10,000, and it's a 5% interest return. And really wanting to bring this up to get us starting to think about what would have to happen to introduce something like this in our community. I see this as a possible way of the initial funding for setting up of a nonprofit housing corporation. And it's the group that is handling this for the Halliburton group is a group called Tapestry Community Capital. And if anyone was interested to Google Tapestry Community Capital, there will be more details there. They deal with nonprofits and this kind of community fundraising. So that's really, it's in introducing the topic. I will turn it over to Nola then for her thoughts on community bonds.
Well, this is one of these social financing models that is really being explored by not only the Institute for Southern Georgian Bay, but a lot of communities as well. And as was mentioned by the presenter tonight, it is often slow going with if you do depend on Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And this basically puts this kind of initiative is fast. It can be fast. And, you know, the example that Jerry gave of the minimum bond of $1,000, well, basically the community, if it was the township of Southgate, if they decided that they wanted to stimulate, not own, but stimulate the development of non-market or the affordable housing, you know, this is one way to go. Like the first step would be doing this, you know, setting aside the lands so that you have control over whatever the agreement would be about what you wanted to put there. But Tapestry is, I heard them present, one of the principal people from Tapestry, as part of a seminar that the Institute for Southern Georgian Bay put on. And to me, it's striking. They've been around and they work for not-for-profits, charities, and not-profit social enterprises. They've been around since 1998. They know what they're doing. And I think the best analogy is think of a Canada Savings Bond. And it is like that. And the other thing is that each group that wants to take on or stimulate a project, because that's what you're doing, you're stimulating a project and you're bringing in private capital for a social purpose, something that people believe in the area. And these guys know how to set it up so that it is an actual investment, and it has a fairly decent return. And if it was let's say if it's a municipality wanting to stimulate something, that municipality would sit down with Tapestry and whatever the principal people were, and you would basically design what you wanted your bond to look like. And it could be a minimum of $500. And then you would also decide, well, who would be allowed to invest in it? Like, would it be individuals as well as businesses, as well as, you know, whatever. You would decide that, like, you have total control over that. And they basically, Tapestry, have the ways and means and know how to set it up. And they would do the marketing of it. And so if you look at that People for Places that Jerry mentioned, if you go to that site, I think they're opening up a bond right now. And so basically there's a time to invest. So Tapestry would take on the marketing of that bond, and based on whatever the organization told them that they wanted, and they would make it known what the money was being invested into. So if it's something like a social affordable housing, for example, or what they've done, major solar panel investments, all kinds of things. And then it's opened up for a given period of time, and people invest, and they can generate millions of dollars that way. They have, and they do. And there you go. You've got some really great money, and you've got people within the community being able to support something they believe in within their own community. So you're creating an opportunity for people to invest in their community, which I think is a real win-win for everybody. Usually your term would be 5 years. Most people tend to flip it over. Like you can track and see the growth of the investment. It tends to average about 2.5%. I think that over a long period of time, I know that the numbers can vary with that, but it's a fairly decent investment that's provided for people by generating an opportunity, kind of like a Canada Savings Bond, only it would be a community bond and directed at a specific thing that the community wants to support. So it's this tapestry can set it up so you as an investor can go in and look and see how your bond is doing. So it seems pretty stable. It's pretty reliable. And I think the best thing is it's allowing people to invest in their own community, keep the money in their own community. And you still have to have, the other levels of government need to be putting their share in. There's no getting away from that. But this at least allows movement. It's faster. They're more flexible. So I think it's really interesting myself. And it's not like they're a newcomer on the block around since 1998. And if you decide to cash out your bond in 5 years, you take it. Fine. If not, well, he said it was indicated that most people tend to flip it over. And the average amount of term people leave it in is about 10, 15 years. So at least you're getting something good for the community started and allowing people to be able to invest in that thing. And plus the fact that they market, they know how to market, they set it up, they do all the financials, and they secure it. They provide a process, platform, and policy to manage $90 million in investment from 4,000 plus investors across Canada. And they provide support through the fundraising process. In other words, when the bond opens up and when it closes, kind of thing. And so I think it's a really great opportunity because honestly, I think our job is to stimulate that affordable housing. I don't think that our job will be doing the supported housing for homelessness. So this is kind of like right up the alley for what we'd want to be having. Yeah.
Nola, can you explain the math for me? So if they're offering, if I invest $10,000 and they're offering, say, 3% on that $10,000, where is it that we're raising money? So is it that I'm also going to give the interest of 3% back to the project, or is it that the hope that the market deems 5% and the project would keep 2% of it? Do you know what I mean?
I do. And it's basically, I would think they're investing in the market. You're basically not using all government money for this. It's being invested. So they're managing that. And you can go and look at it just like any other kind of investment. The only difference is,
how does it benefit? Like where I'm trying to follow the money stream. Where does the money go? And then where does it come back to?
Well, if you're investing, I think with this is, I'm not an expert on that kind of thing. I would think if they're taking it, investing it, like they're providing process, platform, and policy to manage 90 million. I would say that they're, it's being invested in various ways, right? So I can't answer those kind of, I'm sorry, I don't have the expertise to do that. I just know that they have the track record to do that. And there is a return on investment for investors. And it's an opportunity. How would a Canada Savings Bond have been invested to generate money? I think it's the same kind of thing. It's just that you're basically,
so then me as a donator might choose to donate my interest, or it just might be that it's invested in it like I as a donor and get, or like if I buy a bond and I'm guaranteed 3%, then I get my 3% back. But perhaps they've invested and made 7%, and then the community keeps the extra 4%, perhaps.
I think you get whatever what the return would be. Yeah. He just gave an average. It would be your money if it's you investing. And I think the best comparison would be the Canada Savings Bond, which I think most of us are familiar with. So it's basically somebody's handling and knows how to manage a financial portfolio. And it kind of is a different narrative. It takes it away from the subsidized housing. Like, I don't think municipalities want to get into the business of owning and managing things like that. If something like this could stimulate the funds that could get the project started and whatnot. And I don't know, like, it would really be up to, I know you're asking about the investment. I think the fact that if people decide to flip it over and let it ride for another 5, 10, 15 years, that would be your personal choice. That's up between you and Tapestry, whoever's managing that bond. But at some point you want to get, I think you would want to, the nice thing would be that there's a win-win, that people are able to get some return on their investment and do something of benefit to their community, keep the money in their community, in other words, or invest in that. So I think that, I mean, I'm no financial expert. I just, saw that one presentation and was really impressed by that. I know that the Institute is wanting to learn more about it as well, but it sounds pretty nice. Muriel?
Yeah, I listened in on the Places for People webinar as well, and I had also done some reading and been following the whole idea of social bonds and investment. There's a lot of things I don't understand with it, like, and I was looking into Tapestry's website actually, because I wondered whether they worked with a financial institution, like whether it's a bank or a credit union, or are they in an investment company and they're doing their own direct investments. I didn't get that kind of information. I don't know whether you got any feeling about that, and it sort of relates to some of what Carolyn's saying, I guess. Like, it certainly sounds almost too good to be true that it, in terms of investing in your community by buying bonds. But I really like the idea, and I think I really would like us to explore it further. But I did wonder whether our own credit union might have some advice for us along this line.
I wondered if it was more of a capital. Sorry.
Jerry had his hand up.
Okay, all I wanted to say is that I think this is a really, really good start to a conversation, but I think we need more information, more details. And how do we go about it? I'll look to Holly again for some advice. We can't direct staff of Southgate, I don't believe, to look into community bonds, or can we, Holly?
So I can note in the minutes what the discussion was, and then I'll reach out to Clinton once he's back from vacation. He missed the discussion, so I think he probably will be in touch likely with you, Jerry, and Nola, just to get kind of caught up. And then at that point, you can have a discussion with him about what, if he would be able to bring a report forward. But I definitely think it needs more research, and just him not being here to hear the discussion might be kind of a hindrance. So I think it'd be good if I had him reach out directly to the both of you.
Yeah. And Joan, I'll say something, Jerry, and more importantly, this is probably something for finance. I don't think Clinton's going to be into it. Like, I know it'll be for affordable housing, but I think this is a financial thing for the Treasury Department, finance, whatever you want to call it. From what I heard in the conversation, they do government, like the bonds, and I think Nola said they're doing solar too. So it's an investment company. They're going to put our money into no matter what. They're going to get their 3% cut, whether they give us 3 or 5. They have 90 million. It's an investment company, so they're going to make their money off the bond itself too. It's just that this money is, as Nola said, it's not going into all kinds of things. It's actually going back into the community. That is the hinge pin. That's the only difference. So, Holly?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, just given that Clint is our staff person for the committee. It would have to go through him, and he can work collaboratively with other departments in the township if it's required.
Yeah, fair enough. That's good. Okay, sorry, Joan, go ahead.
Sorry, Martin, through the chair.
$5. $5 in the jar.
$5. I was gonna tell Muriel too that she needs to put $5. I think someone from the committee could probably work with Clinton and get some more information on this, so we know what we're getting into and what it is before we can move forward on it. So, yeah, so that would be good. Get more information from someone who want to volunteer to do so, and also get some more information from Clinton, and then we can see what it is and then put our thoughts together. Thanks.
Yeah. And this isn't the only one. There's a lot of different investment companies that do social. So there might even be a better one with a better rate of return too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should look into it. It could be a good start. Something to do hand in hand with community donations, because some people might only want to put 20 bucks in to make the thermometer grow, right? So it can work together. Anything else? So we don't need a resolution. You can just put that in the minutes, then somebody will talk to Clinton. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. I think we've done that. Thank you, Jerry, for looking into that. We'll move on to number 8, correspondence. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Joan and second it.
Muriel, Carolyn? No.
I can. I was just looking it up.
Okay, sure,
can.
Carolyn, yep. Any discussion on that item of Township of Southgate Community Strategic Plan? We've all looked at it. We've got a thing coming up. There's a survey out there. Holly first, she's probably gonna say I've done something wrong.
No, you haven't. I was just asked to remind everybody that there is a survey that's available at the link, and there's also an engagement session being held tomorrow evening from 6 to 8 at the Frank McIntyre building. If anybody from the committee is able to go, and then also if you're speaking to anybody in the community, it's just best to get the word out to as many people as possible.
Okay, Muriel, go ahead.
2 questions. The engagement meeting tomorrow, are they going to have people fill in the survey on the spot, or is this a introduction to the township's strategic planning and the components of that and where it goes in the end, or just what will that engagement meeting be?
I am not 100% sure, Muriel,
Okay.
but I can find out in the morning and send you a follow-up email, just kind of
Okay.
what to expect at the meeting. I'm not super
okay.
involved in the process, but just wanted to pass it along to members.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether I needed to go if I'm doing the survey. But my other question is the survey also going to be available in paper form for those who don't do internet and computer? Because I haven't seen that written anywhere. And
I believe so. We do have some paper copies at the administration office.
Good. Okay.
I'll follow up just to see. I know that they had talked about putting some at the library and then possibly the arena. So I'll see where they're at, and then I can send a meeting out to the committee. And then also just encouraging people to check our website, the Wilton Consulting website, and our social media platforms for any updates as well. We are posting them frequently.
Yeah, Muriel, I would imagine they'd have some hard copies there.
Well, that's
As I
good to
said,
hear.
It was supposed to be in the library and other places,
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
sure they
great.
would have it. And I'm sure I'm not going to put anything into Wilton, but being a consultant, they look at the past and then they're obviously looking for the future. So they might have on hand the actual community strategic plan that's being revised and renewed. And they'll probably check off what has been done. And that's, so, well, this was done. This one underneath it that wasn't done. Do we still want to do it? Like they could just kind of ask for opinions and things like that, just to get a broad spectrum over, because the community is so diverse. So
Yes, very.
and that makes it a problem at times, I think.
That's
Okay,
great.
anyone else? Not seeing anything. We'll move on to number 9, the next meeting, which is September 19th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And that must be okay with everyone. And we come.
Yeah, I think
Was that wasn't a.
calendar.
I didn't need a mover and seconder for that, did I? No. I don't need one for number 10 either, do I? And yeah, I think this was a great meeting. Thank you, Jerry, for the Places for People. Nola, with you working and being part of that great foundation, whatever you're involved in. And especially, it was unfortunate we couldn't hear from John, the other person, but I think Graham touched on quite a bit. And that part was the most important, I think, because it showed us what we basically have to do. So if that's it, I think it was a good meeting. Oh, Joan?
Yeah, I think it was a great meeting, having had those two things from council being approved and also having that presentation. That was great, and the presentation from NOLA. And I now think that we're getting somewhere. At first, we thought we weren't getting anywhere and we weren't really touching bases, right, Jerry? But I think we're moving on to something special, and we're going to be helping the community and moving on forward with Jordan doing all the great work that he's doing. I think it's really a great team and a great committee.
Yeah, I concur. I think I know my feeling. I was getting frustrated. I don't mind saying that, but that's how the wheels of government work. And even Graham said it. You know, you have to think outside the box to get things moving. And if we can have discussions like this and maybe get more information to put a resolution into Clint and then finance for these bonds or whatever, or even get people behind. I think there's a bit more of an impetus started just like when we first formed, and a new phase, which is good. Okay, so blessings to everyone. I think it was a great meeting, and until next time. Holly, are you just saying goodbye, or?
No, we do need just a mover for the adjournment.
Oh. Jones put 2 hands up, so that's, and then Carolyn seconded it. So we are adjourned at 7:21. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.